Today I'm going to go over how I determine if my seeds are viable. I do this in the fall when I save seeds, and then in the spring, if I get seeds from other growers, I will do this as well, just to make sure I think that the seeds I was sent are good. The reason I want to put this video together is I have received some giant pumpkin seeds from a couple experienced growers, and when I got them in the mail, I could tell right away after looking at them that they weren't going to germinate, so I didn't waste my time with them. But I wanted to put this out there for others, so when you're saving seeds or are getting seeds in the mail that you're planning to plant, that you don't waste your time on seeds that probably won't germinate. As you can see here, I have two different giant pumpkin seeds. They are from the same giant pumpkin, but from looks it's hard to tell, but one of them will most likely be viable and one will not. I'll show you how I determine that. So one of the first tests I will do with the seed is I will squeeze it. It may be hard to tell here, but this seed here is good. This one is solid all the way through, and it looks a little bit more plump. So that should be a viable seed. So here's my other seed that I have, and if you can see here, it squishes down pretty thin when I do this. That is a good sign that there's nothing in there, and it's most likely not viable. The next test I do after I make sure they're solid is I do a sound test. So I drop them on a hard surface. A good seed will sound solid when it hits the ground. A bad seed or not viable seed will sound kind of like a poker chip. Hold on while I get my camera flipped around and set the microphone on the ground. That way I can drop the seed right next to the microphone and hopefully it's going to pick up the sound. So here's an example of what a good seed should sound like. If you notice, it has a nice thud. Now here's an example of what a not viable seed sounds like. You can tell it kind of sounds hollow. So this next test is something I wouldn't do if it was a seed I wanted to plant or see if it will germinate. I may just try to plant it and see what happens. But this is the seed that I know is bad. If you can see here, it bends really easy. And if I actually bend it over, it breaks. And it is basically hollow inside. So that is a test you could run, but I wouldn't do that on the seed if it's something you're going to actually want to grow. I just wanted to show you how flexible it was and that it would break if you actually were trying to test that out. Now that you've seen a couple things that I go over to determine if the seeds are viable, I want to show you a couple things that I typically don't look at because they don't determine if they are viable or not. But here you got seeds from different pumpkins. Not sure if you can tell from the video here, but this one right here is a lot lighter than this one. But both of these seeds are actually going to be viable. They're just from two different pumpkins. Some pumpkins have all light ones, some have all dark ones. Another thing is you may get some discoloration on the seed itself. You may even get like a little bit of mold kind of looking stuff on the outside. And sometimes that's just from pumpkins that were put on display, especially giant pumpkins that were put on display late into the fall, and then the seeds weren't harvested until after that. So sometimes these giant pumpkins are put on display at like an apple orchard or a zoo, those type of things, and they stay on display till after Halloween, and then the seeds don't come out till later. So sometimes the seeds get a little discolored on the outside. Here's another example of discoloration. And then I want to show you this right here. If you can see that, that's typically called a white tip. I've never seen an issue with these germinating. So most likely you're not going to have an issue. Those will typically germinate, at least from the tests I've done. Another thing is if you can see that one right there, that one is cracked just on the outside. And that typically doesn't cause any issues either. If it's cracked all the way in and it's going to damage those seed leaves in there, that might be a different issue. But if it's just on the surface, if there's cracks on the surface, that typically doesn't cause any issues. So those are the things I look for when I'm saving seeds for my giant pumpkins. They might be slightly different for other seeds, but I'm sure these tips will come in handy. I use these when I decide to save seeds either for me to grow myself or if I'm going to send seeds out to other people. I usually do the test before I save them, and then before I ever put them in the mail to send to anybody, I test them again just to make sure. Hopefully this was helpful. Please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you.